There is a reason why some marketing messages have an irresistible pull in a noisy marketplace, while others get completely ignored. Whether you are trying to build your business brand or your personal brand, today I want to share my top 12 tips to make your marketing messages sing. I'm going to be sharing my favorite gems from over 15 years working in marketing and communications. These are going to be things that will help you in your written communications as well as in your speaking. So grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. It's that feeling when you hear a song that you love for the very first time. You feel this immediate emotional connection that you probably don't even fully understand. Yes, there might be a killer beat that has captivated you, but it is likely also going to be the words at play that are reeling you into that message. A well-crafted marketing message is a lot like songwriting. It is about serenading your audience. So let's dive into my first tip. Tip number 1 is to have a hook. Let's get this obvious one for copywriting out the way first. A hook is something that is designed to draw your audience into the rest of your communication. It's designed to stand out in a marketplace. It's designed to stop the scroll, for example. If you think about this in the songwriting context, this might be Britney Spears in Oops, I Did It Again, opening her song with I think I did it again, and then drawing you into the rest of what that story is. If you think about this in a marketing context, this could be Apple's very famous Think Different campaign, where that commercial opened with the words, "Here's to the crazy ones," before telling the rest of that story. So for any communication that you are creating, what is the hook of your marketing message? Tip number 2 is don't overwork workhorse words. In marketing, clarity is king and complexity confuses people. But some words get so overworked that they don't stand out to anyone anymore. So yes, plain English is the gold standard when it comes to communication, but try and integrate little elements of creative flair or Latin flair into your marketing messages to help them stand out. So let's look at an example here. Empower is a word that often gets used a lot. So you might take the phrase empower your potential and change it to something like liberate your potential. By making just that simple change, you allow your audience to be less desensitized to what they would normally see in the marketplace. Number 3 is to tidy in threes. Nikola Tesla famously said, "If you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe." As humans, we are conditioned to look for patterns in our environment. And when there is 3, we can start to see a potential pattern. When there's 2, this is more difficult. And when there is more than 3, we run the risk of misinterpreting what the pattern might be. So consider arranging your communication in threes to resonate with your audience. A famous example of this is the Declaration of Independence, which uses the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Tip number 4 is to create contrast and add an anti-hero. In visual design, creating contrast is one of the most important elements because it allows the most important aspects of your design to pop. But the same can also be applied to your writing. How are you creating contrast to show where the value in your communication lies as opposed to the potential failure or the potential anti-hero of your message? If you take a famous songwriting example of this, this could be when Katy Perry sang, "You're hot, then you're cold. You're yes, then you're no. You're in, then you're out. You're up, then you're down." The child's play simplicity that is at play play with these contrasting words creates a message that is almost impossible to ignore. Tip number 5 is to add alliteration. Alliteration is when you take the first sound of a word and you apply it to other words to create this rhythmic effect. It has a sweet subtlety that creates a catchiness that is music to another person's ears. It is in part why a phrase like sex sells resonates so well. Tip number 6 is to rhyme. You are never too old to appreciate a good rhyme. That is because a rhyme has a hearable harmony that acts as music to our ears. For example, think about the phrase, the real deal. Tip number 7 is to mix in metaphors. Metaphors create vivid comparisons for abstract ideas. They make them more relatable and more compelling. For example, Skittles could have said to taste the colors, but instead they said taste the rainbow. Tip number 8 is to play with paradoxes. Paradoxes create intrigue because they show the juxtaposition of opposing ideas. For example, take the phrase the humble brag. Because we are conditioned to understand these words as having certain meanings, it stands out to us when they are put together because we don't understand how that could make sense. If you want to get extra creative, you might also take a popular paradox and return it back to its original form. For example, the phrase less is more could be turned into the phrase less is less. Because we have over time been conditioned to understand this phrase to mean a certain thing, the twist on this phrase then creates something that could potentially stand out to your audience. Tip number 9 for your marketing messages is to repeat yourself. Just like in the chorus of a song, when you repeat yourself, your message is more likely going to eventually resonate with your audience. Take, for example, Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech and his repetition of that dream throughout his speech. It is what helped to make that speech so memorable. Tip number 10 is to add just a hint of hyperbole. Hyperbolic language can add just a drop of drama to potentially plain points. It is the exaggeration that makes that stand out and captures attention. For example, think of Muhammad Ali saying, "I am the greatest." Tip number 11 for your marketing messages is to move to a rhythm. A rhythm in your message creates a harmony for your audience to be able to follow. For example, think of Abraham Lincoln using the phrase, of the people, by the people, for the people. Just like in any good visual design, a rhythm creates a natural flow that helps your audience to move through a message. Tip number 12 is to share a story. Research has shown that when a fact is shared with a story, it is 20 times more likely to be remembered than when that fact is shared on its own. Think about, for example, the way that Nike's Just Do It campaigns often use really compelling athlete stories. So how are you using storytelling to capture your audience attention? Don't let your words get lost in a sea of sameness. Create marketing messages that win the hearts of your audience. If you want to learn more about storytelling in particular and some frameworks, techniques, and tips that you can use for storytelling in your marketplace, then check out my previous episode on this topic. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.